Hello, everybody, and welcome to Uproot Reddit. You know, after work hours are meant for downtime and relaxation, not for interacting with screeching, howling Karens that mistake you for a store clerk. Reddit user Little AZ Mama has had enough of people, let alone Karen's behavior, in today's Reddit post entitled Lady Gets What She Deserves After Assaulting Me and Triggering a PTSD Episode. Satisfying ending. Let's not waste any time and dive right into the story. This is my first time posting, so if I do something incorrectly, let me know and please be gentle. I'm also on my mobile, so formatting could be wonky for all I know. I am a busy mom, so I may not be able to edit in a timely manner. Sorry in advance. And here are some warnings to consider. Quote, trigger warning, PTSD and mention of sexual assault. I do not elaborate on that assault as it isn't social media friendly, obviously. And there is an original title post down at the bottom that we will look at later. For now, here are the cast of characters. Me, just me, entitled Parent or entitled Person. AE is Actual Employee Support Cast. Security, Vet Cop, Cousin Cop, Hubby, and entitled Parent's Kid. For context, this is the experience of a time I was just done with people for the day, and it got really messy. For work, I had to dress in upscale business attire with some antiquated ideas on ladies' wear, like you must wear heels and nylons. I do any shopping or errands on my way home from work. It was years ago, so it will not be verbatim, obviously. I don't have an eidetic memory. That day had been a long one due to my literally crazy boss. So while I was shopping, I had two people already ask me for help. It was an upscale mall, and I was dressed similarly to the store managers. The first two were polite and apologized for the honest mistake, and I was jovial about it since they were so nice. But this is the encounter, to the best of my recollection, with the third person. Yep, the third in under 15 minutes. I was walking away from the shoes to the ladies' lingerie area as I was shopping for nylons when the dreaded "excuse me" happened. Excuse me? Knowing what's happening and what that tone meant, what kind of person probably barked so rudely and relatively loud, especially in a high-end department store? I was completely done with all personal interactions for the day, but especially one that could be draining. So of course I ignore entitled Parent, pretending I didn't hear her. Strident and very loudly now, moving much, much closer. Excuse me! She was setting me off already by being too close, and now I was whining in my head. So I sighed, quiet, audibly, on purpose. I turn around and say, yes? Well, someone just broke the 6 feet rule. You're the manager. Where is XYZ? And no, I don't remember what it was she was looking for exactly, and I really didn't care, to be honest. I don't know, ma'am. Cuts me off before I can finish with the "I don't work here" thing. Well, you should. I'm a frequent and loyal customer, so... And I kid you not, the woman shooed me away. She was all indignant, wanting me to go find out ASAP. ... I'm just blinking at her. Well, go find out already! Shouting directly in my face with spittle to boot. Ugh, ma'am, I don't work here. With a dead-eyed expression. No, I didn't even care enough to expound upon that. Well, I never! You are the rudest employee I've ever encountered. Get your boss! Frustrated and not caring anymore, cause she now had shooed and snapped her fingers at me. I'm not an employee, so I'm not going to do anything but continue my own shopping. You should be ashamed of yourself for your inexcusable behavior. Confused, but going with, sure, you aren't. She said sarcastically, just go find out. I'm running late and I need XYZ. Ma'am, I still don't work here. I turn and take off. By the way, the employees at the store would never walk away from a shopper or be rude. Not ever. I can hear her getting even more aggravated as I leave, but I don't care. She was rude. As I'm looking at the display of hose in the lingerie section to find the correct ones, which takes a few minutes as they aren't plentiful. I need toeless ones for open-toed pumps. And they rearranged it since the last time I was here. I hear more screeching. There she is! Pulling actual employee behind her with just the magnetic force of her displeasure. I don't turn, just knowing this is going to get ugly with the mood I'm in now. Looks confused and a lot worried. I think there's been a... I want that manager's name and her boss now. She will be fired immediately. And give me corporate's number. This is disgraceful. So I slowly turn around. I should warn that while I'm normally very tolerant and love to help older people who need it especially, I greatly dislike stupid, racist, or loudly ignorant people, and I have a temper. Entitled parent stepped into my space again. I let loose, yelling in entitled parent's face. I hate that for good reason. Ma'am, very obviously sarcastic, for the last time, I do not work here. I step away and turn around again, trying to calm myself and avoid a catastrophe. It's silent. Legit, only the classical music they play in the background. I'm desperately trying to find the nylons quickly so I can get the items and get the heck out of there ASAP. Desperately trying to control my temper. I see them and grabbed all they had. Like 5, I don't know. Didn't even check them to ensure they were correct sizes. That's when it happened. That's when it all went to crud. Entitled parent grabs my arm, pinching it hard as her hand slips on my silk blouse. I bruise easily, so it ended up being a huge doozy later. She grabbed me so hard, she pulled the seam on the sleeve. I think I still have it in the back of my closet. I never did wear it again, so I'm not positive. What entitled parent didn't know that escalated the situation drastically was I have extreme PTSD for being sexually assaulted by a gang, and any grabbing of my arms from behind me is a major and usually very violent trigger. I instantly flash back. Sorry, this is hard for me to recount as even now I shake when thinking about it or the attack. This next part, hubby told me since he watched the security tapes later. I dropped my items, jerked my arm away, backed up into as good of a corner as I could, and started screaming in a panic. No! Don't touch me! I slide down the wall at my back with my hands over my ears. I've gone into freeze and hide mode and repeated, no, 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 no. Now you would think entitled parent would back away then, but here's what happened next. Quote, entitled parent then made the mistake of moving closer again in an aggressive manner. I remember some of this part. I looked up into her malicious face and went straight into fight mode, standing up abruptly and into her face screaming aggressively. No, you don't get to hurt me! I'm not entirely present yet, but know something's off as there are no men near me. This is a huge lucky break because any men near me at that moment would have immediately made me go berserk and attack. I'm still in my aggressive stance but started saying something along the lines of, just leave me alone, go away, and more, no, 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 no! Entitled parent finally backed up, and I imagine she thought I was some crazy person and she would have been correct right then. Somehow, actual employee knew I wasn't entirely there and traumatized somehow. My pupils were probably blown wide, and with the automatic sobbing, my mascara was likely already streaked down my cheeks. Hubby said I looked haunted when he picked me up later as I was too distraught to drive home. Actual employee calmed me down a little as I noticed I wasn't being attacked at that moment. That's when security arrived to see a still sobbing, shaking firmly on the throes of the panic attack from the flashback and adrenaline-crazed person. The problem? Security was all male. Back into the flashback, I go screaming and freaking out violently. I know they took entitled parent away at some point, and I hazily remember actual employee sitting on the floor, cross-legged nearby, but not too close. She was talking to me in soothing tones, but I don't remember what was said. For all I know, she was repeating supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, or some alien language. I wouldn't let anyone else anywhere near me. I was too hysterical, crying. I was starting to realize, in relief, it was a flashback only, and became more and more embarrassed and horrified. Actual employee got me to give her my phone to call my in case of emergency contact, hubby. He told me later he explained what likely happened and told them to put him on speaker. He started doing this "you are safe" routine and was on his way. That's what really got me out of the episode enough to start letting them help me. At a distance, of course. We all ended up in the back offices as they called EMTs because I was in shock. Was white. I'm very pale, but bloodless is a different kind of pale. And my heart rate went bonkers and almost fainted. I got my meds out of my purse, took it, and waited as the EMTs came in and did their job. The cop who was with me was a war vet and knew exactly what was going on, how to not set me off, what to ask, etc. Entitled parent was in a different area and was still going insane about the psychotic employee who attacked her and all sorts of threats. So when hubby got there, he heard what she was yelling and told the cops he knew I would want to press charges on anyone who grabbed me and treated me like that. Turns out that another cop, over with entitled parent, was a distant cousin of my husband. Same last name from the same great-great-grandfather or something. They talked a bit outside the room, and I guess entitled parent overheard that he was my husband. She tried to blame my husband for my PTSD attack, as he must have abused me. My husband disabused that notion by laying down some facts explaining why I freaked out, what happened to me, that I was a minor at the time, and that it was before we met. Hubby says he also called her an idiotic lady as he left. All the info shut her up temporarily, but didn't stop her entirely. My husband came in to comfort me and held me. Police finally asked once I was calm enough if I wanted to press charges, and I did. Of course. They had already seen the recordings from security by that point, so only needed me to tell them what happened and to confirm why I freaked out. Entitled parent was told she was being arrested and started up the banshee screaming again. The store manager said he would be banning her for her behavior indefinitely. At some point during that, entitled parent's kid, a teenage girl, showed up frantic looking for her mom. Mall security had escorted her and made quite the ruckus. Honestly, I felt bad for the kid and saw her as she waited for her dad with security when we were escorted out into the public part of the store. Entitled parent kept up the "I'm innocent and this is a misunderstanding" and threatening me for doing this to her all the way until court, supposedly. I really thought I would have to testify for a while, which was very stressful. The prosecutor's office called me a couple months later to tell me she was taking the deal after the CCTV footage and the photographic proof of the ripped shirt and progress of the huge bruise she gave me was shown to her. It was a bad case that would be expensive to fight for her to only lose with that evidence. She was a first-time offender, so she got the option to do a program where they do intensive personal and some group psychotherapy, anger management, rehab, support groups, community service, and such, depending on the offenses. If completed, the record gets wiped clean. She took it as part of the deal. She had to plead guilty in court in front of the judge beforehand. So no testifying about it and my previous assault in open court. I was very grateful for that. One last bit of justice happened though. Her work found out, and due to a clause in her contract, they fired her immediately. Found out about that from the prosecutor too. Haven't heard about her since. Never bothered to check up on her as she did her sentence and wasn't important. By the way, I still hate hosiery, and this wasn't the only time someone grabbed me in public and I freaked out on them. Most recently was this last summer. Also, sorry it's so very long. I tried to trim it down without taking out too much of the needed info. And to anyone worried, I do still go to therapy, support groups, etc., and have since the gang assault happened 20 years ago. You don't get over something like this, but I'm managing pretty well for the most part. By the way, this was in the greater Phoenix metro area and it happened over a dozen years ago, so I'm doing much better for those concerned. I could get a service dog for crowding, but they are expensive and insurance doesn't like to cover them if they aren't for the blind. I've had a lot of time to recover, so the need isn't there as much for it to justify the cost. And then there's the fact that I'm allergic to dogs. I used symbols on the censored words to not trigger bots or cause it to be removed for review and for my personal well-being. I'm keeping it that way for those who read in places that those words would jump off the page, and for all those who are survivors like me, as I don't want them to be triggered by the words as well. For your information, writing this took a lot emotionally, and just putting it in text was very blatant. I didn't need to add to that. This has been cathartic though. Thank you! You guys are awesome and so supportive. For whoever gave me awards, you are the best. I don't know what some of them mean as I'm still relatively new to Reddit, but I'll figure it out. And the original post title is here, quote, "Lady didn't listen to me, triggered violent flashback/PTSD episodes, got arrested, blamed me, then took a deal that required her to plead guilty and get serious professional help, aka she got hoisted on her own butt and it exploded." This is why assumptions can be absolutely traumatizing. Just because she was wearing business attire, you just assumed in your anger and rage that she was an employee at that store when she told you dozens of times that she doesn't work there. It's bad enough when you get called out by a rude Karen, and then that Karen proceeds to go to court, loses her job, gets separated from her family for a short period of time, etc., etc. Yet, it's another thing to be yelled at by a rude Karen, dragging her kid through the store and causes an uproar just because you don't work there. Reddit user Green Sweatshirt recounts their "I don't work here, lady" experience titled, "Karen wants me to work there, but I don't." Here are the cast of characters, quote, "The players of this story are myself, Karen, OBK or obese kid about 10 to 12 years old, and store clerk. I just joined and don't know how Reddit works, so please bear with me and enjoy the story. I live way out of town, but work in town, so I frequently go into stores before or after work while dressed in my work clothes, since this saves me a 2-hour round trip to go home and change. This will become important later. Last fall, I was looking for a washing machine and found a really nice one marked down to less than half price. I found a sales clerk who was helping a man and a lady, and when he looked in my direction, I indicated that I would like to purchase the washing machine when he was finished with his other customers and had a minute. He nodded. I went over to the washing machine to wait for him so I could keep first dibs on buying it. A woman, who will be known as Karen, with a very obese kid in tow, came up to me and asked me for help. No biggie. This has happened to me before. I smiled and told her that I don't work here. Then, she got irritated and told me she couldn't find anybody who worked there. Honestly, the sales clerk was maybe 10 feet away. And that she wanted me to work there. That is the dumbest odd request I have ever heard. But I digress. I said, "But I don't work here." Then she said, "But I need help with the dishwasher." I told her that I know nothing about their dishwashers and don't even own a dishwasher, and that she would need to ask someone who actually does work there. And what did she do? She glared at me and was about to leave when she glanced at my shirt and gasped. She was quiet for a few seconds, but it was just an intake of air before I was treated to one of those famous Karen rees at full volume in person. She pointed to my shirt and said, "What do you mean you don't work here? You do too work here, and I want your help right now. That's enough of your nonsense." I looked at her calmly and said, "Ma'am, this," pointing to the embroidery on my shirt, "says name of grocery store. You are in name of hardware store. I do not work here." But she wasn't having any of it and let loose at me at full volume, yelling about being a mother and having her kid with her and how I needed to stop messing around and help her because she has a kid. poor obese kid looked embarrassed. I actually felt sorry for him because he must have had to deal with her nonsense every day. Karen stomped away, yelling about making a complaint. Then for some reason, she turned around and came back to glare at me. I told her again that I do not work there and that she would simply have found someone who does work there to help her. She kept complaining and telling obese kid how he would have to wait since I refused to help her, yelled at me about how she is a mother and her time is important, and on and on and on. After a few minutes, she quieted down and stood between me and the dishwashers, glaring at me. I couldn't resist. I gave her my sweetest smile and said, "Oh, and when that clerk is finished with the people he's helping, I'm next." She let out an epic "Ree!", grabbed obese kid by the arm, and stomped off, rolling on the floor laughing. As soon as he saw that Karen was gone, the store clerk quit talking to the other customers who he'd been halfway hiding behind, made sure she was out of sight, then, seeing that it was now safe, came over to help me. Karen. What part of I Don't Work Here did you not understand? Instead of getting all up in arms against someone who specifically told you that they don't work here, use whatever brain cells you have left to go to a cash register and ask a real store clerk for help. Oh, on another note, that's all for today. We'll be back for more inconceivable Karen moments right here on Uproot Reddit.